So in the last video we talked about how to ISO against two people from the early position. We found that it was mostly ace king off and kings, and then ace jack suited and ace nine suited, and then some ISO on all ends. Now let's continue by going over how to ISO against, let's say, more early position limpers, but just 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. So we'll cover that right now. So against 3 people, as we see, the change, there's going to start to be some changes. It's basically going to be, we start to add ace queen suited, which wasn't really part of the range until the cutoff, or only in the cutoff, we can say. Whereas as soon as, mid position also starts to limp, we want to add pocket queens, ace queen suited for value, and keep all these bluffs. We can also add king queen suited, from the hijack at least, because at this point king queen suited, firstly, the thing about king queen suited is that it's got great equity against a hand like even ace king. It's got 37%, and then it's like flipping against ace jack, for example, or any ace x basically. And it's even doing well against some hands that need to call, such as pocket queens. Again, pretty much a flip. It's behind against aces and kings significantly, but the great thing about king queen suited in specific is that we are actually blocking pocket kings, pocket queens, ace king, and ace queen, which are, the predominant hands that might be able to call us. So we're blocking a lot of combos that can call us, and even if we do get called, usually we're not doing too terribly, especially since, under the gun +1 should be ISOing pocket aces and pocket kings, add some frequency. Well, maybe not pocket kings, but pocket aces should be an ISO relatively frequently, as we see. So important to note here, I noticed that ace king off and king king kind of play the same way pre-flop. Another interesting development that happens once there are 3 limpers is that all of a sudden 10-9 suited starts to become a good ISO. So when there is only 2 limpers, 10-9 suited or 1 limper, as we'll see later, 10-9 suited was a hand that never wanted to really ISO, because 10-9 suited does quite decent in, let's say, a heads up or a 3-way pot, and it's good to have some board coverage, and it's good to have these type of hands that can, call against an ISO, or like, I don't know, let's say we're here and then we call and then somebody ISOs and someone shoves. 10-9 would be one of those good hands to be able to call against that, whereas now, once there's so many people in the pot, 10-9 suited won't do that great in a super multi-way pot, and it's basically one of our best bluffs. We can like ISO non-all in, and then we can call against a shove. So for example, if 10-9 suited ISOs here, everyone folds, and then, I don't know, this guy shoves. Even if the other guys fold, I think 10-9 suited will, 10-9 suited is always going to be in our ISO call range, whereas, like, it's the best hand, basically, to ISO call with, whereas, And notice that he should be limp shoving all his aces and stuff. Yeah. And it's just a 10-9 suited is a great hand to call compared to even Jack 10 suited. We'll go over that soon. And it would obviously be even better if, you know, if let's say we have like another guy going all in, we can even call 9-8 off. This is interesting because here we got 3 all-ins, and now we can fold 10-9 suited because we're too likely to be getting dominated now. Whereas hands like Queen Jack suited, Queen 10 suited, kind of, or just getting pot odds at this point. So that is pretty interesting. But what I want to show is how 10-9 suited does against a hand like 10-9 suited against aces. So here we got aces, and we can see that 10-9 suited actually has 40% equity, which is, you know, quite good. We can say that we're almost kind of flipping against aces. Not really, you know, we are a dog, but it's not terrible. So that's a very good thing to see. Now what happens all of a sudden when we got Jack 10 suited is we lose 5% equity. And this is what I wanted to show earlier, yesterday actually. It's that, you know, if we're facing an all-in, a limp raise against a range composed of premiums, it's always going to be better to have 10-9 suited than Jack 10 suited, just because Jack 10 suited, one of the ways it wants to win is by hitting a straight quite often. And so, you know, if you have an overpair, it's just way better to have more possibilities of straights that the overpair isn't blocking. So against a range of aces and kings, or then 10-9 suited is just always going to be better, because if you're up against aces, for example, it's going to be much less likely for you to make a straight, at least the Broadway straight. And that's why Jack 10 suited is not as valuable as 10-9 suited, since we can still hit like Queen Jack King for the second nut straight in this situation, which would be a great situation to get into. So that's one of the reasons why 10-9 suited is so good as an ISO. Aces and kings, aces and ace king suited are still ISO non-all-ins. These are basically the two strongest hands in the entire game, ace king suited and aces. They are stronger than pocket kings. Well, aces obviously is, and then ace king suited is almost as strong as pocket aces. It's like, if we had to rank the hands, it would basically be aces, followed is the best, ace king suited is the second best, pocket kings is the third best, ace king off is the fourth best, and then like ace queen suited, followed by pocket queens, ace queen suited and pocket queens. Again, quite close. But ace queen suited should be stronger than pocket queens actually in this game. So that's the way things are looking in terms of the premiums. And we're ISOing again when we shouldn't be ISOing offsuit broadways too much. And I'd like to actually open a second browser to kind of compare side by side open ranges. Against an ISO range, because I notice we're still open folding from the hijack queen 9 off and king 9 off, which for example we should always have been limping. We should have been limping if it was folded to us. At least that's what I think. Yeah, definitely. We were even open limping king 7 off, king 8 off, queen 8 off, jack 8 off. Those are all folds now because of the limpers ahead of us. So that's very important to note. That we are really cutting quite a bit of our range, and we're actually widening our suited hand range. So when we're in a multi-way pot, you know, it's much more important to have playable hands that can hit the nuts more often. So a flush will very often be very playable. That's why all suited hands are being played. At the same time, we want to be able to hit straights. That's why, 10-8 off is much better than king 9 off from this situation, just because 10-8 off can hit more combinations of straights. We see here that we're folding 35%, and when it's folded to us, we're only folding 25%, 23% even. So, we should be about 10% tighter here. So we talked about how we can start to fold, how we can start to jam, king queen suited and pocket queens now. Should be about a 50% to 75% frequency, really. And you can also sometimes, like, ISO non-all-in, I guess, although yeah, that's a bit hard to remember. Otherwise, pocket jacks is okay to ISO with, but again, don't want to do it too much. Queen jack suited, king jack suited. And the main thing that will be a theme is going to be the 10-9 suited. So let's just see how everyone else reacts against 3 early position limpers. When we fold, when the hijack folds, it's not going to change much, I think. So again, ace queen suited is still a jam from the cutoff. Again, the big difference on the cutoff is that ace queen off really likes to ISO shove. The thing is, again, button probably isn't going to ISO too wide. Therefore, ace queen off isn't a great hand to play post flop with, but it is still a profitable jam, and we're going to be the last person to be able to ISO before the button. And because of that, we don't mind just taking the pot down. So even when we get called with ace queen off, we're not too thrilled. It's going to be a profitable jam here for sure, and so that's why ace queen off does like to jam from the cutoff, but not, for example, the hijack. Probably, okay, from the button it's okay. Otherwise, the rest of the range is pretty similar. Queens, ace queen suited, down to ace jack suited. Yeah. And again, 10-9 suited, king 10 suited, king queen suited are great hands to be ISOing non-all-in with. King queen suited and king jack suited, king 10 suited. Those are good hands to ISO non-all-in with, and queen jack suited, for example. Just because you kind of dominate whatever people might be limp calling with, or buttons call against an open raise range. Ace 9 suited, ace 8 suited are kind of your bluffs, blocking an ace, we're less likely to get limp raised, and it's important to have these bluffs. Probably against weak players, I think we should not be ISOing these too much. And then we got, 10-9 suited. Again, once we have 3 or more people in the pot, 10-9 suited becomes a great ISO as a bluff, basically. Alright, anyways. So let's move on to the button, as we saw from the hijack and cut off. The only real difference was that ace queen off should be an ISO shove on the cutoff. On the button, ace queen off should also be an ISO shove. I guess it's just that we just don't have too many more people to worry about, and there's so much dead money in the pot that it's really great for us to take this dead money down. An interesting development. Well, in terms of the suited aces, nothing really changes. There are a couple of interesting developments which I notice. And the first is that, king, queen suited, king, jack suited, queen, jack suited, king 10 suited, queen 10 suited. Those are hands that were, or maybe not the queen, jack, and queen 10, but the king X suiteds were being ISO'd either as a shove or a non-all-in before. Kind of because we wanted to cut some people out of the pot, and we wanted to build a big pot with a hand that might dominate some limp calling ranges. On the button, we're more concerned about being able to actually play these hands post-flop, and so it's more important now to check the hand back and make sure we don't get limp raised upon when we hold a hand such as king jack suited or king queen suited on the button. On the other hand, pocket queens, which was previously being a mix between ISO shoving or ISO non-all-in, mostly ISO shoving, is now either a check back or an ISO non-all-in. It's just that we don't have as much value against 3 early positions, and so we don't mind mixing in a limp occasionally with pocket queens. And if we do ISO, there's, we can just ISO call with pocket queens. The next thing is that we should still be ISO shoving ace 8 suited. Before we were even ISOing ace 7 suited, but checking back some ace 10 suited. So I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. If you want to remember exactly that, you could. Otherwise, you could just jam, ace jack to ace 8 suited all the time. Or in this situation, ace queen suited as well all the time. But the next big thing is that jack 10 suited, which was being ISO'd only a bit before, is now ISOing 100% of the time. I guess that jack 10 suited is just a good hand to ISO. What happens if we ISO non-all-in? Do we have to call with jack 10 suited? We do have to call with jack 10 suited against at least one player, but not against 2. Interesting. That's really interesting that we don't call against 2 players. Oh, maybe under the gun +1 calls, fold. Yeah, okay, so mid position, so if we're against under the gun and under the gun +1, we need to call because under the gun +1 will have a calling range of premiums mainly. So we'll be up against a range of 2 premiums, whereas if under the gun +1 folds and MP calls, MP should be ISOing most of his premiums pre-flop, but MP can call against the limp raise with 10-9 suited and jack 10 suited, which is really interesting. Excuse me, because under the gun's limp shove range should be suited aces, queen 10 suited, etc. All right. So if MP is calling with those hands, then we on the button are going to be blocking each other if we call with 10-9 suited or Jack 10 suited. That's why in this position now, it's totally different than if under the gun and under the gun +1 go all in. All right, that's so interesting. Glad I looked at that. Even ace queen suited was a fold, as we saw. Okay. So, anyways, as we were looking at Jack 10 suited is an ISO 100% of the time now. I suspect that it's probably pretty similar to the reasons why we could ISO like 10-9 suited earlier. It's just okay to ISO with. We're going to have some fold activity. We're going to be able to get the pot with less than 4 people. We're going to be able to more likely win the hand in that situation. And all of those factors are pretty good for us. Whereas if we check back, then yeah, we're in position, but at the same time, in a 4-way pot, the likelihood of us winning just isn't as great. Also, Jack 10 suited can mix in an ISO shove. It's going to force a lot of his hands to, a lot of their hands in general to have to fold, basically, which is really good for us. Okay. The final thing on the button is that, ace-9 and ace-8 off were always good bluffs, but we didn't have any other non-all-in bluffs, whereas now we do, because we're last to act. We don't mind cutting people out with these hands as kind of bluffs, and queen jack off, king jack off, 10-9 off. We want a bit of board coverage, and even if we get limp raised upon, it's not the end of the world. These are relatively easy hands to be folding. It just, from hijack or cutoff, we want the hand to be suited to be able to dominate people more. That's why we were ISOing king queen or king jack suited earlier in earlier positions, as we see. But on the button, we're last to act, so there's no one behind us to potentially call with a hand like, I don't know, queen 10 suited or something. Or like a suited broad connector or something. And so that's why it's not as important to ISO the suited broadways, but we can still ISO these just as a bluff sometimes.